The first $100,000 is a mathematical wall most people never climb. Not because they're unlucky, not because the system is rigged against them. They fail because they don't understand the psychology of their own stupidity. I've spent 70 years watching intelligent people sabotage themselves with the same predictable mental errors. And I can tell you this with certainty. Your brain is wired to keep you poor. Let me be direct. You're fighting against millions of years of evolution that programmed you for immediate gratification. Your ancestors who saved berries for next winter didn't pass on more genes than the ones who ate them immediately. But we're not living in caves anymore. The rules changed, but your brain didn't get the memo. That's the first problem you need to solve. Capital is freedom. Capital is leverage. Capital is the difference between being a biological machine that trades hours for dollars and being a rational actor who can make decisions without a gun to your head. Without that first 100,000, you're just another worker bee, praying your health holds and your boss stays happy. One medical emergency, one corporate restructuring, one economic sneeze, and you're finished. I'm not exaggerating. I watched this play out through the Depression, through every recession since, through 2008 when people lost everything. The people with capital had options. They could buy assets when everyone else was panicking. They could wait out the storm. They could take intelligent risks because they had a margin of safety. The people without capital got crushed. Not because they were stupid, but because they were powerless. Here's what nobody wants to hear. Getting to that first 100,000 has almost nothing to do with intelligence. I've known brilliant people who died broke and mediocre minds who built fortunes. The difference wasn't IQ. It was rationality. It was the ability to recognize and counteract the psychological tendencies that make humans do idiotic things with money. Let me walk you through what you're really fighting. You think you're fighting low wages, or bad luck, or the system. Wrong. You're fighting yourself. You're fighting what I call the psychology of human misjudgment, 25 hardwired tendencies that evolution gave you to survive in tribes, not to build capital in modern markets. First tendency that's destroying you, reward and punishment, super response. You are a simple creature. You do what gets rewarded and avoid what gets punished. Sounds reasonable, except modern society rewards consumption and punishes saving. You buy a new car, and everyone compliments you. You drive a 15-year-old beater while saving aggressively, and people think you're pathetic. Your entire social environment is punishing the exact behavior that would make you wealthy. Every advertisement, every Instagram post, every conversation with your peers is reinforcing the wrong incentives. Your brain evolved to care desperately what the tribe thinks, because getting kicked out of the tribe meant death. So, you spend money, you don't have to impress people you don't like, and you wonder why you're broke at 40. This isn't philosophy. This is biology working against your financial interests. Second tendency, social proof. Humans are copying machines. If everyone around you is leasing BMWs and taking European vacations, your brain interprets that as correct behavior. It doesn't matter that they're drowning in debt. Your subconscious sees the crowd moving one direction and screams at you to follow. This is how you end up with negative net worth while keeping up with the Joneses. I'm going to tell you something that sounds harsh, but will save you decades of misery. Most people are financially incompetent. Most people will work 40 years and have nothing to show for it. Most people are following a script written by marketers who want to separate them from every dollar they earn. If you follow the crowd, you'll get the crowd's results. A lifetime of financial anxiety and a retirement that depends on government checks. Third tendency, envy and jealousy. This one's particularly destructive. You see someone with a bigger house or a nicer car, and something primitive in your brain starts howling. That howl will cost you everything if you listen to it. I've watched envy destroy more wealth than bad investments ever could. People making $200,000 a year living paycheck to paycheck because they can't stand that their colleague bought a boat. Here's the inversion principle I want you to burn into your brain. Instead of asking, how do I get rich? Ask, what makes people stay poor? The answer is obvious once you look. People stay poor because they can't delay gratification. They stay poor because they care what strangers think. They stay poor because they let their emotions override their arithmetic. Every single time, the math is brutally simple. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference in productive assets. Wait, that's it. That's the whole game. But simple doesn't mean easy because you're fighting a brain that wants pleasure now, status now, comfort now. Your brain is screaming at you to optimize for today, while your future self is the one who pays the price. Fourth tendency, contrast, misreaction. Your brain doesn't evaluate things in absolute terms. It evaluates them by comparison. You feel rich until you meet someone richer. You feel poor until you see someone poorer. This tendency makes you irrational about money in predictable ways. You get a 20% raise and immediately inflate your lifestyle by 25% because you're comparing yourself to some reference point that has nothing to do with rationality. I'll give you a specific example. When Buffett and I were young, we didn't compare ourselves to successful people. We compared our choices to the opportunity cost. Every dollar spent on consumption was a dollar that couldn't compound for decades. That's the rational comparison. But almost nobody thinks that way. They're too busy comparing their car to their neighbor's car. Fifth tendency, deprival, superreaction. Humans hate losing what they have far more than they enjoy gaining what they don't have. This is why people hold losing stocks too long and sell winning stocks too early. This is why they can't cut bad expenses from their budget. They experience the removal of a luxury subscription as a painful loss, even though not subscribing in the first place wouldn't have hurt at all. Your brain treats giving up your daily coffee shop ritual like someone is stealing food from your mouth. Meanwhile, you're spending $1,500 a year that could be compounding. In 20 years, that's $50,000 you burned because your brain can't handle the feeling of giving something up. Let me tell you about compound interest, since everyone pretends to understand it, but nobody really does. Compound interest is the most powerful force in finance, but it's completely useless if you have nothing to compound. That's the tragedy. People read about Buffett compounding at 20% for 60 years, and they think, great, I'll do that too, except they have $500 and 3 credit cards charging 18%. They don't have a compound interest problem. They have a capital formation problem. Here's what compound interest actually looks like in the beginning. Insulting. You save $6,000. You earn 10%. That's $600 before tax. Your car breaks down and takes $900. You feel like a fool for bothering it. This is where 90% of people quit. They can't handle the psychological pain of watching small numbers grow slowly while life keeps punching them in the face. I didn't get excited about compound interest in my 20s. I was grinding, suffering, watching tiny returns that couldn't pay for a vacation. The discipline of continuing anyway, that's where fortunes come from, not from brilliance. From the stubborn refusal to quit when quitting makes emotional sense. Sixth tendency, availability, misweighing. Your brain overweights vivid, recent examples and underweights statistical reality. You know someone who got rich in crypto, so you think that's a viable path, ignoring the thousands who got destroyed. You remember the stock tip that worked and forget the 10 that didn't. This tendency makes you chase performance and buy tops. The rational approach is to ignore stories and trust systems, but humans aren't rational. We're story-driven creatures, and stories lie to us constantly about probability. Every lottery winner who appears on TV makes 1 million people waste money on tickets because the vivid story overwhelms the mathematical reality. Let me give you the framework I use. I call it inversion. Instead of asking, what should I do to succeed, I ask, what should I avoid to not fail? The second question is far more valuable because the big disasters all come from a few categories of stupidity that anyone with discipline can avoid. Avoiding stupidity is more important than seeking brilliance. This isn't modesty. It's mathematics. If you avoid disasters, the compounding takes care of itself. But one major screw-up can erase decades of discipline. I've seen it happen to people smarter than you'll ever be. They got clever, they got greedy, or or they got careless, and 40 years of capital accumulation vanished in one stupid decision. Let me tell you what stupidity looks like in practice. Stupidity is borrowing money to buy depreciating assets. Stupidity is carrying credit card debt while pretending you're an investor. Stupidity is thinking you can outtrade professionals who spend 80 hours a week studying markets. Stupidity is buying a house you can't afford because you're terrified of being priced out forever. These aren't edge cases. This is what most people do. Seventh tendency, authority misinfluence. You trust authorities even when they're wrong. Your brain evolved this tendency because in tribal settings, defying the chief got you killed. But in modern finance, authority figures are usually selling you something. The financial advisor gets commissions. The media needs clickbait. The economist is promoting his book. They're all optimizing for their interests, not yours. But your brain keeps treating them like tribal elders who have your welfare at heart. I'll be blunt about financial advisors. Most of them are mediocre salespeople who couldn't beat the market if their lives depended on it. They'll charge you 1% annually to put you in expensive mutual funds that underperform index funds. Over 30 years, that 1% fee compounds into you retiring with 30% less money. But they have a nice office and wear a suit. So your brain screams, trust authority, while they quietly rob you. The rational move is simple. Buy low-cost index funds. Hold them forever. Ignore everything else. But that advice doesn't make anyone money except you. So nobody with a platform will say it loudly. They'll complicate it, add caveats, sell you newsletters, and convince you that investing requires expertise you don't have. It doesn't. It requires discipline you probably don't have. But that's a different problem. Eighth tendency, doubt avoidance. Your brain hates uncertainty. When you don't know something, you experience psychological pain. So you rush to eliminate doubt by making a decision, any decision, even a bad one. This is why people panic sell in crashes. The uncertainty of, will this recover, is unbearable. So they sell at the bottom just to stop feeling the discomfort. I've lived through more market crashes than most people have birthdays. Every single time, the same thing happens. Smart people who understand compounding intellectually completely lose their minds when their portfolio drops 30%. The emotional pain overwhelms the logic, and they do the exact thing that guarantees permanent loss. They sell. Here's what you need to understand. Market volatility isn't a bug. It's the feature that creates returns. Stocks pay you a premium for enduring psychological discomfort. If holding stocks was pleasant and easy, they'd return 2% like bonds. They return 10% because most people can't handle watching their net worth fluctuate wildly. That volatility is your compensation for being rational when others panic. But your brain doesn't think in 30-year periods. It thinks in right now. When the market drops 20%, your amygdala lights up like you're being chased by a predator. Every instinct screams, danger, escape, do something. The rational action is to do nothing, or better yet, buy more. But rationality feels like stepping off a cliff when your emotions are shrieking at you. This is why I keep hammering on psychology instead of investment strategy. The strategy is trivial. Buy productive assets. Hold them. The psychology is where everyone fails. You're not fighting the market. You're fighting millions of years of programming that never had to deal with stock portfolios and compound interest. Ninth tendency, incentive cause bias. People are predictably irrational when their paycheck depends on it. The realtor tells you to buy now because prices will never be lower. The mortgage broker gets you the biggest loan you qualify for. The car salesman explains why leasing makes sense. None of them are lying exactly. They're just thinking whatever keeps them employed. Your own incentives distort your thinking too. You want to believe you deserve that vacation. You want to believe the expensive car is justified because you work hard. You want to believe your career is safe so you don't need a large emergency fund. These aren't evil desires. They're human, but they'll keep you poor if you let them override arithmetic. The way I've always handled this is to create counter incentives. Every time I'm tempted to spend on something stupid, I calculate what that money would become if invested for 30 years. That BMW isn't $40,000. It's $200,000 in retirement money. When you frame it that way, suddenly driving the old car seems a lot more appealing. 10th tendency, self-serving bias. You believe you're smarter, more competent, and luckier than you actually are. 90% of people think they're above-average drivers. 90% of investors think they can beat the market. This tendency makes you overconfident and vulnerable to mistakes that someone with accurate self-assessment would avoid. I've known many brilliant people. I've been fortunate to work with some of the smartest minds in business, but I've never met anyone smart enough to consistently outsmart markets through trading. The math is against you, the fees are against you, the professionals are against you, and your own psychology is against you. Yet people keep trying because they can't imagine they're not special. Here's what special actually looks like. Special is having the discipline to live below your means for a decade. Special is continuing to save when your portfolio drops 40%. Special is ignoring your brother-in-law's hot stock tip. That's special because almost nobody can do it. But it isn't sexy, so people keep chasing the fantasy of getting rich through cleverness instead of patience. Let me talk about debt, because this is where I see the most spectacular stupidity. Debt is the opposite of compounding. When you have capital invested, it compounds in your favor. When you have debt, it compounds against you relentlessly. A credit card charging 18% interest is compounding your poverty while you sleep. I've watched people make $100,000 a year and live paycheck to paycheck because they financed everything. The car, the furniture, the vacation, even their daily expenses on credit cards they can't pay off. They think they're living well. They're actually building a prison one monthly payment at a time. Here's the math everyone ignores. If you're carrying credit card debt at 18% while investing in stocks hoping for 10%, you're paying an 8% penalty to feel like an investor. That's not sophistication. That's delusion. The rational move is obvious. Eliminate all debt before you invest a dime. But that means admitting you can't afford your lifestyle, and people will do anything to avoid that admission. 11th tendency, reciprocation. Tendency. When someone gives you something, you feel obligated to give back. Salespeople know this. They give you free samples, free trials, free consultations. Then your brain feels like you owe them. This is how people end up buying things they don't need from people they just met. The credit card companies understood this perfectly. They give you rewards points, cash back, airport lounge access. You feel like they're being generous. Meanwhile, they're charging merchants 3%. And those merchants raise prices to compensate. So you're paying for your own rewards. Plus, the psychological game of chasing points makes you spend more. They're not giving you anything. They're manipulating your reciprocation tendency to extract more spending. Meanwhile, they're charging merchants 3%. And those merchants raise prices to compensate. So you're paying for your own rewards. Plus, the psychological game of chasing points makes you spend more. They're not giving you anything. They're manipulating your reciprocation tendency to extract more spending. I don't play these games. I've never optimized for credit card points. I've never cared about status or perks. The mental energy people waste gaming loyalty programs would be better spent figuring out how to earn more or spend less. But that's harder, so they focus on extracting an extra 0.5% cash back while missing the bigger opportunities. 12th tendency, excessive self-regard. You think you're special. You think the rules don't apply to you. You think you'll be the one who gets rich day trading or flipping houses or starting a drop-shipping business. This tendency makes you vulnerable to every get-rich-quick scheme that comes along because they all tell you what you want to hear. You're smart enough to beat the system. I'll tell you a secret. The system beats almost everyone. The people who get wealthy do it through boring, unglamorous capital accumulation over decades. They're not special. They're disciplined. There's a difference. Special means you have unique talents. Discipline means you do the obvious thing even when it's emotionally difficult. The first 100,000 isn't about being special. It's about not being stupid. Don't finance depreciating assets. Don't carry high-interest debt. Don't inflate your lifestyle every time you get a raise. Don't chase performance. Don't panic in downturns. If you can avoid these errors, you'll accumulate capital. It won't be fast, it won't be exciting, but it will work. Let me address the timeline because this is where people's expectations destroy them. Building 100,000 from zero takes most people 7 to 10 years of aggressive saving. That's not a guess, that's math. If you save 1,000 a month and earn 7%, you'll hit the target in about 8 years. Most people can't stomach 8 years of discipline. They want it faster, so they start looking for shortcuts. They discover options trading or cryptocurrency or some guru selling a course on passive income. They convince themselves they can hack the system. Then they lose money, get discouraged, and quit altogether. They'd have been better off accepting the timeline and just grinding through it. The timeline feels unfair. I understand that. You work hard, you sacrifice, and for years it feels like you're getting nowhere. Your friends are posting vacation photos while you're eating rice and beans. Your colleagues are driving new cars while you're nursing that old beater along. The social pressure to quit is immense. But here's what they won't tell you. Most of those people posting vacation photos are drowning in debt. The colleague in the new car just signed up for 6 years of payments. They look successful. They're actually trapped. 13th tendency, liking tendency. You do business with people you like, even when it costs you money. You buy from the friendly salesman. You hire your buddy's kid. You invest with your cousin's firm. Your brain prioritizes social comfort over rational decision-making, and it costs you a fortune over a lifetime. I've made plenty of mistakes in business, but I learned early to separate liking from competence. I don't care if someone is charming at dinner parties if they can't deliver results. Most people never learn this distinction. They keep hiring incompetent people they like and wondering why nothing works. The path to 100,000 requires you to be ruthlessly honest about performance, starting with your own. Are you actually saving aggressively, or are you making excuses? Are you avoiding stupid debt, or are you financing your lifestyle? Are you staying invested through volatility, or are you checking your portfolio daily and panicking? Most people lie to themselves. They say they're investors when they're really just gambling. They say they're building wealth when they're really just treading water. They say they'll start saving seriously next year. Next year never comes. The calendar keeps flipping and they stay broke. Let me tell you what discipline actually looks like, because I don't think people understand. Discipline is driving past the car dealership when your bonus clears. Discipline is saying no to the vacation your friends are planning. Discipline is watching your portfolio drop 30% and buying more anyway. Discipline is explaining to your spouse why you won't upgrade the house, even though you can technically afford it. None of that feels good. Discipline doesn't create Instagram moments. It creates something far more valuable, optionality. When you have capital, you have options. You can leave a toxic job. You can start a business. You can buy assets when everyone else is panicking. You can take intelligent risks. Without capital, you take whatever life gives you and you smile while it happens. 14 tendency, stress influence. When you're under pressure, you default to primitive behaviors. You make emotional decisions. You seek comfort. You abandon long-term thinking. This is why most people's finances fall apart during crisis. The stress overwhelms their rational planning, and they do whatever stops the immediate pain. I watched this in 2008. People with decent portfolios panicked and sold everything at the bottom. They couldn't handle the stress of watching their net worth collapse. If they'd done nothing, they'd have recovered everything within a few years. Instead, they locked in permanent losses because stress made them stupid. The solution isn't to be fearless. The solution is to build systems that protect you from your own stress response. Automate your savings so you can't spend them. Set up automatic investments so you keep buying through crashes. Create rules in advance for when you'll sell, so stress can't override your logic. Most people have no systems. They wing it. They tell themselves they'll be rational when it matters. Then stress hits, and they discover they're not nearly as rational as they believed. By the time they figure this out, it's too late. The damage is done. 15th tendency, availability. Misweighing combined with vivid evidence. You remember dramatic stories and ignore statistical reality. You know someone who got rich in real estate, so you think that's the path. You heard about someone who lost everything in the market, so you avoid stocks. Your brain is collecting evidence completely wrong, favoring stories over data. The data is clear. Broad stock market indexes have compounded at roughly 10% for a century. Real estate returns are lower once you account for maintenance, taxes, and transaction costs. But real estate feels safer because you can touch it, and everyone has stories about their uncle who made a fortune. Those stories are drowning out the mathematics that should guide your decisions. I'm not saying don't buy real estate. I'm saying don't let vivid anecdotes override statistical reality. The boring, diversified approach beats the exciting, story-driven approach almost every time. But boring doesn't sell. Boring doesn't go viral. So you're surrounded by exciting stories about exception cases, while the boring winners compound in silence. Let me be clear about what $100,000 actually means. It's not retirement. It's not financial independence. It's not even that much money in absolute terms. What it represents is proof that you can control yourself. Proof that you can delay gratification. Proof that you can build capital in a world designed to separate you from every dollar you earn. Once you prove that to yourself, the next 100,000 comes faster. The psychology changes. You're no longer fighting yourself as hard because you've built the mental muscles. You've established the patterns. You've survived the boring years and seen the compound interest start to show itself. The second 100,000 typically takes half the time. You're saving more because you're earning more. Your existing capital is compounding. The math starts working with you instead of against you. By the time you hit 500,000, the annual returns dwarf your salary. That's when people start calling you lucky. They don't see the decade of discipline that built the foundation. 16th tendency, mental compartmentalization. You treat different money differently based on arbitrary mental categories. Your tax refund feels like free money, so you blow it. Your salary is serious money, so you're more careful. But money's money. $1 from a refund spends the same as $1 from your paycheck, yet you treat them completely differently. This tendency makes people irrational about windfalls. They get a bonus and immediately spend it on luxuries because it feels like found money. If they were rational, they'd recognize that bonus as concentrated opportunity to accelerate toward their 100,000. Instead, they compartmentalize it as extra and waste it. I've never thought this way. Every dollar has the same job: compound or provide necessary value. It doesn't matter where it came from. The bonus, the refund, the birthday check from grandma, they all go to the same place. Invested capital, growing quietly, while everyone else is at the mall. 17th tendency, inconsistency, avoidance. Once you commit to an identity or position, your brain resists changing it. If you see yourself as not a money person or bad at saving, you'll keep behaving consistently with that identity, even when it's destroying you. Your brain would rather be consistently wrong than admit you need to change. This is why I don't believe in financial resolutions. People decide they'll start saving in January. They last 6 weeks, then quit. Next January, same resolution, same result. They're trying to change behavior without changing identity. It doesn't work. The shift that matters is recognizing that you're not bad at money. You're just operating with brain firmware designed for a different environment. Once you understand the psychological tendencies working against you, you can build countermeasures. You're not changing your personality. You're just outsmarting your own predictable irrationality. Let me talk about the finish line because people misunderstand what happens when you hit 100,000. You don't suddenly become rich. You don't quit your job. You don't buy a boat. What you do is absolutely nothing different. You keep saving. You keep investing. You keep living below your means because 100,000 isn't the destination. It's mile marker 1 on a marathon. This is where people sabotage themselves. They hit the milestone and treat it like an excuse to celebrate. They upgrade their lifestyle as a reward for their discipline. They've just spent 10 years building capital, and they destroy the momentum right when compound interest is finally getting interesting. It's like climbing a mountain for hours and then rolling back down on purpose because you're tired. The rational response to hitting 100,000 is nothing. No celebration, no lifestyle inflation, no relaxation of discipline. You just keep grinding because now the math is finally working in your favor. The returns are becoming meaningful. The compound interest is showing